Oh, what was I worried about? Oh, God!
The lorax, a cultural reset that was first released all the way back in 1971 by Dr. Seuss. However, we are specifically going to be focusing on the 2012 version of this story in this video. From its absolutely iconic cast to the wholesome message that it gives us of how we as a society need to stop taking advantage of the trees, not to mention the fact that the characters as well as the songs from this movie are cultural phenomenons within themselves. It's got somewhat of a similar message and vibe as the Bee movie does, but instead of having bees and Jerry Seinfeld, we instead have trees and Danny DeVito. What more could you ask for? Like, what more could you want? It is nothing less than iconic. So in today's video, I'm going to be going over everything to do with the 2012 version of the Lorax. The Lorax franchise began with Dr. Seuss's book, surprisingly called The Lorax, which was actually, fun fact, the 30th book that Dr. Seuss released, all the way back in 1971. Dr. Seuss created the Lorax in order to bring attention to deforestation and the effects that it could possibly and potentially have if we as a society didn't stop being so goddamn rude to the trees. In 2009, it was announced that a new animated version of this story would be created by Illumination Studios, who are the masterminds behind the franchise that is the Minions, making this the second animated version of this story to be told. The first being released all the way back in 1972 by CBS. Now, the story of the Lorax is kinda like the Bee movie in a way, in that the plot of the movie is becoming a reality, and it's strange how these movies are becoming true. Like, it's strange how they're all kinda becoming a reality. It's as if like we're kinda manifesting these things to become true, and if that is the case, I would like these movies to become a reality next. Like, specifically Cool Cat Saves the Kids. So like this is my favourite movie of all time. The second animated version of this movie was released on the 2nd of March 2012, and it was actually released on Dr. Seuss's 108th birthday. They also named the two main characters after Dr. Seuss and his wife as well. Now, I thought we could take a wee break from the facts and the logic and the lore of the Lorax in order to talk about the plot of the movie. Now, the movie starts with an iconic opening scene, a speech from the Lorax himself, played by the icon. I've been so excited to talk about this man. Like, the Lorax is played by the icon, the almighty Danny DeVito. Like, this movie wins already. This movie beats every single other movie. If I've ever said any other movie is my favourite movie, I have lied. This movie is it. It has Danny DeVito in it. Like, what more could you ask for? Now, in this speech that the Lorax gives to the viewers at the beginning of the movie, he states his iconic phrase, which is kind of like his wee catchphrase in a way, right? And that is,
I speak for the trees. He said it!
It's important to note that the Lorax himself is kind of like, he's kind of like a mythical creature. He's kind of like a wee god. It's kind of fitting that Danny DeVito does play him because, of course, like the god kind of aspect of it. His whole thing is that he's like the kind of guardian of the forest. Like, he's the guardian of the trees and stuff. So that is the Lorax's like whole sense of self. He is a true activist. He is an icon and he's a king. The Lorax then sets the scene for us as the movie begins. The movie is set in Finidville, which is suffering with the consequences of the biggest oopsie committed by society, and that is deforestation. However, nobody in this town seems to care. They just don't seem to care that everything in the town is plastic. The trees, the flower, the greenery, everything is like inflatable and like plastic and stuff like that, which is just very strange, but they seem to be cool with it. They don't really seem to care. Now, as the credits kind of roll at the beginning of the movie and kind of introduce the cast and stuff like that, we are greeted with this song about how fake and artificial the town really is. And I don't know if this is like an unpopular opinion or not, right, but the songs in this movie are like top tier. They're like god-worthy songs, right? I don't want to hear anybody say that they're awful or that they have caused them severe pain in their ears, because their works of art, they're so good. Like, how can people not like the songs?
We have all these freaking hypocrites criticizing
the Lorax
for the littlest of reasons. It makes me so mad.
We are then introduced to Ted, who is played by Zac Efron, who is a simp for Audrey, played by the queen that is Taylor Swift. Audrey then shows Ted this painting that she's been doing of like trees. However, I just want to point out here, right, Audrey, like, she's literally just graffitied over the walls. Just so you know, you're committing a felony. Ted is flabbergasted by this painting. The way that I view the songs in this movie is like little pieces of art. This is how he sees this painting. However, Ted is a bit of a dumbass, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, he's just a bit stupid, and I'll explain why, right? he doesn't know that the paintings are of trees, like he doesn't know what they are, so Audrey has to tell them that they're trees. Like, how do you know what a tree looks like? Audrey tells him that they're trees and tells him about how the trees used to grow in their town and how there used to be loads of them and stuff. She tells Ted that she wishes that she could see a real tree in real life. Now, because Ted is down bad, he basically goes on a mission to find a real tree in order to get the hole. Ted asks his mum and his gran where he can find a real tree, and his gran tells him that he would have to go and find the once-ler. The mum doesn't believe in the once-ler and tells the gran to just silence herself. However, the gran banishes the mother away so that she can tell Ted about the once-ler. She tells Ted that the once-ler knows what happened to the trees, and in order to find out what happened to them and in order to find a real tree, he would have to find the once-ler. The gran tells Ted that he lives just outside of town and that he has to bring him 50 cents, a nail and a shell from a grandfather snail, which wouldn't be hard for Ted to get because, you know, that just sounds like the ingredients that go into a pot noodle, isn't it? Anyway, Ted gets the items and heads to find the once-ler. Now, as Ted is escaping the town, we are reintroduced to the mayor of the town, who we were introduced to at the beginning, like in the song and stuff, but like this is where we actually get to like see him and get what his deal is and stuff. Now, because there's no trees in the town, Mr. O'Hare basically profits from the fact that the air is polluted by selling clean air to the people. What a top tier way to profit off people suffering. Like, what an icon this man is. Now, you have to understand that this is why Mr. O'Hare doesn't want the trees to come back, because if the trees come back, then they will supply the air, like, and stuff, and like people won't have to buy the air from him, so he will lose all of his money. The trees will ruin his business that he's got going on, so he needs them to be away. Now, because Ted opened the door to escape the town, he sets off an alarm, and Mr. O'Hare basically is alerted to the fact that he has left town, and he obviously can't get him now because he's left, but they're keeping their eye on him essentially. Now, leaving the town is a big no-no. Like it's very strange because it's like, to get out of the town you need to like open a door and like go through this weird like back door kind of nonsense. It's like very obvious that like the people are being held there against their will. Like, this town is a real dictatorship. I didn't know Dr. Seuss could be this dark, but anyway. Now, Ted drives through a trap that basically is covered in sharp pieces of glass and also drives over a cliff and is basically breaking the law as well by leaving town. He's doing all of this for Audrey, but to be fair, I would do all of that stuff for Taylor Swift as well. Now, Ted arrives at the once-ler's house and the once-ler basically tells him to piss off essentially. However, when Ted mentions that he just wants to hear about what happened to the trees, the once-ler has a wee change of heart and decides to tell Ted the story of what happened to the trees. Now, the story starts with the once-ler telling Ted about this invention that he had called a finid, which is actually what the town is named after. He wants to travel from town to town to try and get his invention noticed and also to find the perfect material to make the finid with. However, we see that his family don't believe in him and basically laugh at him and like just take the piss out of him and stuff. So the once-ler like has a lot of trauma, like he has a lot of baggage, if you will. It's actually really sad. See, this movie's deep, man. This movie's very sad. Like, Jesus Christ. Now, the once-ler sets off looking for the perfect material in order to create the finid. However, he has no luck until he stumbles upon a forest full of trees. He basically arrives in the most wholesome place to ever be created. It's full of trees and little animals and stuff like that, and he is shook to his goddamn core because these trees are like the perfect materials to create this finid. However, the once-ler manages to piss everyone off by basically cutting down a tree. Now, the animals in this forest are gobsmacked, right, because they know who is about to come down from the heavens, who this man has just summoned by cutting down this tree. They all run away as the tree falls to the ground, and now the once-ler, by cutting down this tree, has summoned the most magical creature in all of history, that being the lorax, played by the king, the icon that is Danny DeVito. I think I've already said that, but I don't care. We need to talk about Danny DeVito. Danny DeVito is the best character in this movie. He is the best voice in this movie. The fact that he wasn't nominated for any awards for this movie, but everybody else was, like, what the hell's up with that? Anyway, I'll never stop being a Danny DeVito simp, but we'll move on with the plot of this movie. Now, the lorax looks and sees why he's been summoned, and it's because the tree has been cut down, and he is deeply offended. Like, he takes this very personal, and he is very, very sad. Like, he's heartbroken. Look at his little eyes. Like, you can tell this man is heartbroken. The lorax then confronts the once-ler about cutting down the tree and asks him why he did it, and the once-ler just kind of like is like spooked at the fact that this man has just came down from the heavens to shout at him. The lorax then banishes the once-ler from the land, as the lorax is the king and speaks for the trees. The lorax and the once-ler have a wee back and forth and like kind of just have a wee argument and stuff, until the lorax basically comes to the conclusion that the once-ler isn't going to leave, so he basically just gives him a warning and tells him them to stop cutting down the trees and to leave the wildlife alone and stuff. However, we are brought back to the present day, and the once-ler basically tells Ted that if he wants to hear the rest of the story, he has to come back the next day. Now, the reason that he's splitting the parts of the story up is because he wants to see Ted's dedication to finding out really what happened to the trees so that he knows if he can trust them or not. Anyway, the next day Ted goes back to see the once-ler. However, on his way to see the once-ler, he is stopped by the mayor. Now, the mayor basically tells Ted about how much of a tree hater he is, and that if he brings the trees back, then there will be big consequences for him, and that he better stop trying to find out what happened to the trees. He basically threatens him, right? However, Ted doesn't care and also doesn't listen because he is a bit of a dumbass, right? And he leaves anyway. He leaves to go see the once-ler yet again, and the once-ler continues the story. Now, this part of the story kind of just sees the lorax and the animals just kind of take the piss out of Ted. Like, they kind of put his bed into the river, and that's a whole fiasco within itself. However, because they kind of see the error of their ways, they save the once-ler from like drowning essentially, and the lorax and the once-ler kind of have like a wee heart-to-heart. The lorax basically begs the once-ler to just stop cutting down the trees and to just leave them alone because they need the trees to survive. So he basically begs them to just leave the trees alone, and the once-ler agrees. After this, the once-ler basically tries to sell the fneed. However, everybody just takes the piss out of him, and nobody seems to think it's a very good invention, and they all just kind of giggle at him. However, he basically assaults a lady with the fneed, and she basically models it for the town because everybody can now see it on somebody else. Because somebody else has it, everybody else wants it, and so because of this, they all march their way to the forest and demand that he makes everyone a fneed. And the story is then cut short again as the once-ler tells Ted to come back the next day to hear the rest of the story. Now, as we're back in present time, we then follow Audrey as she realises that her painting of the trees, to be fair, she did graffiti the wall, right, but it has been covered up. This makes her shake and cry violently. However, as this is going on, Ted goes back to see the once-ler yet again to continue the story. The story continues with the once-ler's family showing up, and they begin to annoy the life out of the lorax and the animals. The lorax gets really pissed off with this and asks his family to leave. He does say it in quite a rude way, to be fair, but if Danny DeVito asks you to leave, you leave. You know what I mean? Like, you do what that man tells you. The once-ler basically stands up for his family and tells the lorax to like know that his family will stay in and stuff like that because he's finally getting the approval that he truly has always wanted from his family. You know what I mean? Like, he has some severe mummy issues, and he wanted his mum to love him, which is actually very sad. Again, this movie is very deep. This then leads to a discussion between the once-ler and the once-ler's mum, where the once-ler's mother tells the once-ler, oh my god, how many times am I going to say once-ler, that he has to cut down more trees in order to make more fneeds, because the way that they were doing it is I think they were just picking the kind of fluff from the trees, but they would get it done a lot quicker if they chopped the trees down. He decides that cutting down a few trees wouldn't be such a bad thing, so he decides to cut down a few. Now, the lorax is obviously really upset by this because the agreement that they had that he wasn't going to do it, but the once-ler basically ignores him, which is very snaky behaviour if you ask me. The once-ler begins to become very delusional and convinces himself that he's the good guy, and the lorax is just very jealous of him and his boogie. This then leads the once-ler into singing the song How Bad Can I Be, which is very iconic within itself, and we will talk about that later, do not worry, right? Now, during this song, it's kind of like a montage, and it basically shows the amount of trees that are getting cut down, as well as the amount of pollution that's been put into the air because of the fneed factory. Now, even after the lorax's best efforts to warn the once-ler about what he's doing and trying to stop him and stuff, the once-ler just doesn't stop because he is an absolute snake. And the song ends, and we see that the once wholesome forest that we were introduced to at the beginning of the movie has now turned into this polluted, treeless society. The lorax tries to convince the once-ler to stop for the last time. However, he tells him to piss off essentially, and as they're having this conversation, the very last tree is cut down, and as a result of this, the once-ler is basically over. The fneed is over, there is no more materials to make it, and his family leave him because they are the worst, and the once-ler is left all on his own. The once-ler is then met with the reality of what he has truly done to this forest and to their society, and the lorax disappears back into the sky like the god he is. This leaves the once-ler all on his own, and the once-ler tells Ted that he regrets everything and that it's all his fault, and Ted basically is like, yeah, it's all your fault, snake. Imagine snaking Danny DeVito and acting like the victim, like, my god, I hate this bitch so much. Now, basically, because Ted had been going back every day to hear the rest of the story, it showed the once-ler that he is dedicated to this cause and he is dedicated to getting the trees back. So the once-ler trusts Ted and gives him the last seed of any tree ever in the world and tells him to go plant it in the middle of town so that everyone can see. So Ted goes to plant the seed back in town. Now, he arrives back in town and tries to avoid the cameras that are around the town because of like the mayor put them there because he's an absolute crazy whore. However, despite his best best efforts, the cameras catch him anyway, and they send an alert back to the mayor that Ted has this seed. Now, Ted is unaware that this is happening though, and he goes back to his house and phones Audrey and tells her to come and meet him at his house. So basically, Ted goes up to his room and puts the seed on his kind of like counter, and Ted's mother like shouts at him to come back down the stairs. So he goes down the stairs to like see what's going on, and he sees the icon that is Mr. O'Hare, the mayor, waiting for him in the living room. They basically tell the mum to piss off, and they basically have a wee talk with Ted and basically ask him where the seed was, and Ted is just acting dumb and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so basically they go up to his room and start trashing his room, try to find it, until the mum comes up and basically tells them to leave. Now they leave because they can't find this seed anywhere, and Ted is frantically looking for it. However, it is revealed that the gran actually took the seed and hid it from Mr. O'Hare because she is a queen, she is an icon. Now Audrey arrives at the house at this point, and Ted tells her that they're going to go plant this seed in the middle of town, and Audrey is flabbergasted as she has always wanted to see a tree, of course. So they set off to go to the middle of town to basically plant this tree, and they are chased by Mr. O'Hare. They have a wee chase sequence of the two teams kind of going back and forth, like sometimes one will have the seed and the other times the others will have the seed, and it's just kind of, you know, a wee chase scene, if you will. Now they basically arrive in the middle of town, and Mr. O'Hare arrives at the same time and basically tries to convince the public that trees are evil and that Ted is going to destroy the world that they live in by planting this seed. However, Ted doesn't care and basically gives a little speech and destroys the wall, like the big barrier between the outside world where he went to see the once-ler and the world that they live in, and it basically shows everyone that they've been living in basically like a false reality, and that they've basically been like living in a dictatorship, and everyone is shook to their cores, and everybody's basically woke. They're all woke now. They've basically seen what reality really is like. They've really seen the world that they truly live in. Now he gives a wee inspirational speech about how in order to save their society, they need to start by planting the seed, and they need to start looking after the trees and stuff when this seed grows. Now they then sing a very iconic song which is called Let It Grow, and they let the seed grow, and it's very cute, very wholesome times. Now as a society, they then banish Mr. O'Hare. They tell him to piss off. Ted then gets the hole, and the tree grows, and everybody's all happy and wholesome and stuff. However, we then see that because the tree has been planted and stuff and the seed has grown, that the lorax returns from the heavens in order to speak to the once-ler. They have a wee heart to heart, and I'm not gonna lie, this actually made me tear up. Like, I'm not even taking the piss either. Like, I was actually like, oh my god, this is so wholesome, man. Now this movie is like the B-movie, and that it is very topical in today's day and age, and that it is heavily centred around saving the trees and the impact of deforestation and what it can do to us as a society. However, as well as this, the songs are all absolutely iconic, and it has Danny DeVito, so I will give it a 10 out of 10. Now, the lorax done incredibly well at the box office due to the fact that it had our Lord and Saviour Danny DeVito in it, and managed to debut at number 1 at the box office and made $70 million in its first day. Now, although it done really well at the box office, it was met with a lot of mixed reviews. Like, it depends on who you go to. Sometimes people review this movie and be like, yeah, it was cute, it was funny, like me. And then you'll go to other people who have very wrong opinions and will say that it was bad. Now, it's not got the worst, like, IMDb score that I've ever seen in my life, but as I said, the reviews were really mixed. It doesn't seem like people really know how they feel about the movie. Like, as I was reading through the reviews, my favourite one was just this one here that somebody left that said, this movie is a nightmare. Then gave it like 8 out of 10 stars, which is, like, am I just wrong? Like, is that no good or something? Like, I thought that was pretty good. Like, it's just, people just don't really seem to know how they feel about it. A lot of the negative reviews went in on the fact that the movie can be quite boring at times. Now, I know I may be biased because I just love Danny DeVito, but I think when the lorax shows up, it gets a wee bit better. Like, it kind of speeds up a wee bit. However, the common complaint is that it's very boring and it's quite slow. Like, the movie's just, it drags on a bit. Now, another complaint about this movie that I've seen quite a lot is ironically something that people genuinely love about it, and that is the music and the songs within the movie. What's quite weird about this is that, again, as I said, that this is something that people genuinely do love about this movie, so it's like, it's very weird how it's like split people down the middle so heavily. So let me know, like, are you one of the guys that, like me, has great ears and great music taste and loves the songs, or are you just a degenerate who has no music taste whatsoever? Despite this though, it was nominated for many awards and even won some, such as Best Voice Acting in an Animated Movie, which went to the icon that is Taylor Swift for her character Audrey. However, the fact that Danny DeVito wasn't even nominated in this category, like, what the hell is going on here? Like, what the hell? Like, he was, oh my god, he has the most iconic voice. Give him an award.
If you do not give Danny DeVito all the awards,
as soon as possible, then I will come down on this hospital like the hammer of Thor. The thunder of my vengeance will echo through these corridors like the gust of 1,000 winds.
Now the lorax could have been just like any other animated kids movie, that being that it just kinda is around for a while but then kinda just disappears with little to no cultural impact on our society. Now it can be argued that artists and people that create pieces of media and stuff like that do create it in order to leave a lasting impact on society and stuff like that. However, I don't think we could have imagined or predicted the absolute cultural phenomenon that this movie right here would have caused and would have had. Now, as mentioned before, the songs are obviously a huge part of this movie, and the songs within the movie have went incredibly viral over the years. However, since we decided that TikTok was no longer cringe as it once was, everyone started to use the song How Bad Can I Be in their videos. It was everywhere in 2020, like during lockdown and stuff like that. People would use it to show off their cosplay, animate to it, just lip sync it, make covers of it. Anything you could think of, they would do. And of course, they would make edits of this sound and of the character of the once-ler. And we will get into that in a wee bit. Like, do not worry yourself. That song specifically, like, went mega viral. Like, it's just, and it's always kind of been like a wee bit of a cultural phenomenon within itself. It is a banger, to be fair. However, another one of the lorax songs that did go a bit viral and stuff like that and kind of became like a meme is the song Let It Grow. Specifically, Mr. O'Hare's verse in the song, which is of course the iconic phrase, I'd let it die, let it shrivel up and die, in reference to the tree. And it's so iconic. I love this movie. It's so good. Now, there are thousands of videos on YouTube using these songs from the lorax movie that have thousands of views and millions of views even. The lorax as a character was also used as a meme, as a lot of animated characters often are. And I think the fact that he was voiced by Danny DeVito as well and kind of just spoke about how he speaks for the trees was kind of added to this, to be honest. However, this is nothing compared to what the internet, but specifically Tumblr, done to the once-ler. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I was really spooked by Tumblr back in the day. Like, I would go on it and stuff and I would kind of like just look at stuff, but I was so scared because you would hear such horror stories, like pure horrific stuff that would go on that website. You would hear tales of horrific and spooky groups who would collect on this website. People who would take these innocent little animated characters and turn them into big yummy men. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, this phenomenon was known as the Tumblr sexy man saga. Oh my god, I can't believe those words just left my mouth. Now, if you want to hear more about the Tumblr big yummy sexy man saga thing, like, I'll leave this video here by one of my favourite creators, basically kind of going over it and stuff, because she goes over it in a lot more detail. I'm just going to kind of be talking about specifically the once-ler, but there's a lot of other characters that kind of were taken in by this group of people and turned into big sexy yummy men, if you will. Now, Tumblr yummy men was a phenomenon that had the most random cartoon characters you could ever imagine taken and turned into big yummy men. Now, some examples of this include Sans from Undertale and Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls. Now, I don't know if there was any like criteria for a character to become a Tumblr sexy man or a Tumblr yummy man, if you will. They would just pick the most random characters. It's so weird how they would pick them, but they would obsess over these characters. They would create fan art for them. They would create like whole personalities for them. It was just a whole weird phenomenon, like fan fiction and stuff like that. Like, just a whole phenomenon within itself. Now, you may be wondering why I'm traumatising you by bringing this up and what this even has to do with the lorax itself. However, what I'm here to tell you is that this has more to do with the lorax than you could ever imagine. I am so sorry to be the one to tell you this, but this wholesome little movie, they took one of the characters from this movie and turned them into a Tumblr sexy man, and that character is the once-ler. No, I'm not kidding. This man was considered to be a top tier yummy man back in the day. They created a whole personality for him. They created fan art for him, fan fiction for him, edits for him. Like, people were obsessed with him. I just can't with this world anymore. Like, I need Danny DeVito to come down from the skies to give me hope, because I just can't deal with these people. Now, as a result of Tumblr's random selection of the once-ler as their new yummy man, it solidified the lorax's place in our society and the internet's history forever. In conclusion, the lorax could have been just another cash-grabbing kids movie that would have got lost in time like other movies that came before it and other movies like it. However, although the reviews are mixed, I think that the message that it sends us as the viewers of how we need to take care of the trees and how deforestation can have an incredibly devastating impact on our society is very wholesome and very cute and stuff, and is very relevant in today's day and age. The impact that this movie had over internet culture in the most random ways possible as well is just so incredibly iconic. However, I think the most important thing that this movie gave us is the fact that it gave us the chance to have the ultimate crossover between Danny DeVito and Taylor Swift, and that, my good sir, is what truly makes it a godsend of a movie.
I speak for the trees.